All right, Nick, let's talk about the Houston Texans. It is draft time. The draft is just days away now. But before we get into the draft, let's talk about some really good signings the Texans made to shore up this team, who I think has been a great team. I think last year was a very good standout season for the Texans, but I think we're going to see even more from the Texans this year from all the moves they've made, and especially the moves they just made for the special teams, which is going to be a crucial part of the game going forward with all of the changes. Let's get into the articles and we'll talk more about them on the other side. These are two tweets from over on X. First is from Ian Rappaport saying the Texans are re-signing running back and core special teamer Dare Ugumbawale. I probably butchered that. I apologize if I did. Sources say he's a third down back. Ugumbawale earned national fame with a successful field goal last season, and with the new kickoff rules, anything is possible. He has gotten a 1-year deal. The second one is not a re-signing, rather a signing, and they are signing former Browns free agent linebacker Jacob Phillips to a 1-year deal per Adam Schefter. I think this is also a very interesting move because we've talked about it. This new special teams game is going to be very crucial, and linebackers may have a big part to play in that aspect. Nick, I'm curious what your thoughts are on these two signings, but Texans fans, the draft just a few days away. We want to know your thoughts on everything's Texans. Let's go back through the draft history and talk about the biggest Texans draft steal of all time. I think there's been some really great guys who kind of slipped through the cracks. The Texans got them in the mid to late rounds, and they just absolutely shine through this team. Let us know who your Texans' biggest draft steals are in the comment section below. But Nick, what are your thoughts on these latest two signing and slash re-signing for the Texans?
Look, I know a lot of Texans fans, when they probably heard this news or saw this news, they're like, okay, why are we even talking about this? But like you alluded to in the opening, Miles, the new special teams rules are going to have a drastic impact on the game, not just in how the special teams are being played, specifically the kickoff and kickoff return game, but also the amount of big play opportunities that haven't been present over the past couple of seasons are suddenly going to come into the fold. You have the new rules in terms of it's not a mad dash 60, 70 yards. The kickoff team is already starting across midfield. The kickoff return team is right there as well. And as Bill Belichick, when he was being interviewed on the Pat McAfee show, noted that this is going to have a massive change in how teams manage the bottom part of the roster. And he envisions this new era of special teams football where teams are going to have to go bigger on special teams. Before they could go smaller wide receivers and corners for a large part of their special teams units because it was a lot of, like I said, sprinting. Kickoff team, you're sprinting 70 yards downfield. Kickoff return team, you want to be a little smaller because even though you're not sprinting, you're backpedaling 30, 40 yards, 50 yards until you have to go block one of those guys who's sprinting 70 yards downfield. Now that everyone's more close and more jam-packed, it's about being bigger. It's about being stronger. It's about being more thick, the ability to block, open up opportunities, or to break through those big, strong guys who are trying to block in the kickoff return game. And that's what the smart teams are recognizing. And they're going out and saying, okay, we need to get bigger special teams guys. Jacob Phillips is not necessarily known as a special teams guy, but I see him being as a depth linebacker piece / special teams asset. He certainly has the skill set and the size to do it. The running back, like you mentioned, I'm not going to even try and pronounce his name because I'm not going to disrespect him like that. He automatically is a special teams guy. He has the skill sets to be a returner or maybe a lead blocker in the return game as well. But that's the whole point here that we want to focus on, is that the Texans, along with a couple other smart teams, we talked about the Chiefs doing this earlier this offseason as well. They recognize that the rules have really changed the dynamic of special teams. You've got to get bigger. You've got to get stronger. The era of having a bunch of wide receivers and corners, having the 5'8", 185-pound corner or the 5'11", 195-pound safety or wide receiver as your predominant special teams guy, that era is over, right? And teams like the Texans that recognize that, they're going to go out there week one, they're going to physically dominate people in special teams and create a lot of big plays. And if you're a team like the Texans that clearly is in contention with C.J. Stroud and the rest of the roster they have, and of course head coach D'Amico Ryans and the entire coaching staff, those special teams plays, that can be the difference between winning a division title and just making a wild card and having to go on the road the first week of the playoffs. It can be the difference between winning a division, winning in the divisional round or losing in the divisional round and making it to the conference title game. We see it every year. The Chiefs beat the Eagles in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago on the back of special teams, right? We've seen a lot of teams really struggle in that area. Look at the Green Bay Packers the last few years with Aaron Rodgers. They got knocked out of the playoffs 3 or 4 different times because of special teams issues, right? People really want to forget about it, but it's such a critical part of the game. And it got even more critical with these new rules changes. And I think the Houston Texans need to be given a lot of credit for recognizing that, being proactive, and making sure they fill out their special teams with the right kind of players to take advantage of these new rules.
Yeah, Nick, and I think there's just some really great stuff in here as far as, things they can mix up when new rules come into play and new rules that, drastically change the way things are done. I think sometimes you can get away with a little bit of trickery in how you do stuff. People aren't expecting things. There's just so much on the table until everyone kind of settles in. So having guys that allow you to do stuff that's a little bit more interesting, I think helps you out. Having a running back who's a little bit of a bigger guy, bigger than a wide receiver or a corner at least, who has a pretty strong leg, maybe boot one on the kickoff for you, having basically an extra guy running down the field, that could be interesting. Just kind of slant the things in your favor every way you could possibly do it. Because honestly, I don't think a guy who had 8 carries for 35 yards last year, they're not signing him to be a running back. I think they're signing him more so for his special team abilities and what he can add to the team in that aspect. I think that's what they're going to try to highlight this year. That's why I think picking up guys like this, I am expecting the Texans to do some really kind of interesting stuff on special teams this season.
And you bring up a great point about potentially using him as a kickoff man, because one of the things that's been noted is that because of the change in the rules and the distance between the kickoff team and the kicker, that basically the thought is if the returner can just break through the first line, there's now nobody there. It's going to be a touchdown every single time. If you get past the 30, you're going the next 70 because it's you versus the kicker in the open field. And obviously the kicker's going to lose that. But if you have a great athlete, not a kicker in the open field, suddenly you're in a position to limit the damage and it's not a touchdown. Again, I love what Houston's thinking here. I love the fact you brought that up. I think that could be a big part of their strategy. It's finding any little advantage you can to put yourself ahead of your competition. Because look, the AFC is brutal. We all know it is. The Bengals with Joe Burrow are going to be good. The Ravens are good with Lamar Jackson. Of course, the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes, they're one of the best teams in modern football, right? They're totally honest about that. Even the Jacksonville Jaguars are a pretty good team inside your own division. And of course, Jim Harbaugh joining the Chargers with Justin Herbert. They're thinking to be a good team. The Bills are still good. The Dolphins are still a contender. I mean, the AFC is just stacked. You got to find any way you can to win these football games, and focusing on special teams and getting an advantage there is usually a big way to help you come out with those big wins. And I think the Texans are taking the right approach. I think it's a little under the radar, but I think it has a chance to have a big impact for them come regular season time.
Data brokers sell your information to scammers, spammers, and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, email, home address, health records, even your relatives. It's all out there. That's why we use Aura, the sponsor of today's video. Aura shows us which data brokers are selling our information and automatically submits opt-out requests for us.
Cleaning up our information not only reduces the amount of that stupid spam we all get, but it also protects us from hackers who could use this information to help them access our social media accounts, bank accounts, and other sensitive information. Aura also does much more to protect us and our families from online threats. We also get features like antivirus protection, VPNs, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more without having to download several different apps. That's really key. One location, get all this great stuff. It's really easy to set up. And the best of all, we get everything at one affordable price.
And you may already have one or two of these tools already, but not having Aura is like locking the front door and leaving the back door wide open. Aura is always on doing the hard work to keep you safe so you can focus on other tasks and have peace of mind. We value our privacy and we value yours. You can go to aura.com/Saturday to start your 2-week free trial. Also, link below in the description. Again, aura.com/Saturday for your free 2-week trial.